Welcome to Jane's Place, where dreams learn to fly. Season 2, the Strength Series. If you are new to Jane's Place, welcome. If you joined me last season, thank you for continuing the journey with me. For those of you watching this podcast, you see a picture of me from the summer of 1995. I was just promoted to division president at Frito-Lay, the highest ranking woman at Frito and the first woman in a president role. At 36, I was at the top of my game, and it's pretty evident from the look on my face, the glass of champagne, and the cigar that I thought I was somebody important. And maybe I was. But within 6 months, there would be a reorganization at Frito, and my position would go away. I would move into a role that was clearly a demotion, and within 2 years, I would leave the company. From hero to zero. From my vantage point today, the story of why I got demoted is not very insightful. What is insightful is that I did not have the tools to deal with this failure. I didn't realize that it was just one of many bumps in the road that I would have in both my professional and personal life in the years that have followed. I didn't realize that this was just part of my journey where failure and success are two sides of the same coin. I didn't realize that I would be a better leader and stronger person on the other side of this. Honestly, it hurt like hell and shook my confidence. So in season 2, I talk about passion again, and I ask most of my guests about resiliency and how they manage during tough times. Because it is not if we will have failure, it is just when. And when the win comes, and it will, do we have the tools to learn and grow from it? Thanks for joining me for the Strength Series. And spoiler alert, 30 years later, failure still sucks. On today's episode, I'm chatting with Chris Bentley, a dear friend of mine and a leader in the world of sustainability. If you look up the term eco-warrior, you should find Chris's picture next to it. Chris is a mentor to many and is deeply involved at the University of Colorado. When I thought about season 2 and our focus on resiliency, I immediately thought of Chris. He is the most positive person I know, always looking for the bright side of every situation. I have a special place in my heart for Chris for many reasons, but one was how he befriended my mother when she was alive. The two of them have never known a stranger and make every person they are around feel special, important, and hopeful. Please go to janesplace.com to learn more about Chris and his favorite comfort food, which is popcorn made the old-fashioned way. My favorite question to ask my guests, which is, what are you most passionate about?
For the last 10 years or more, but really since some things have turned around in Washington, I really am interested in getting as many students interested in sustainability careers as possible. So I do that a lot through the mentoring programs, both officially and unofficially. I have adopted mentees that I meet when I'm speaking to classes or that are recommended to me by people who know I want to mentor that specific group. And I just think when all this stuff is okay to say Trump, when all this Trump crap goes away, there's going to be a real gaping hole that we're going to need to have young people to fill, to do the right things and bring it back, maybe even in a different way or a better way than it was before. I was having a conversation with Hunter Lubbins about 6 months ago, and she said, we were on her back porch sipping whiskey, and she said, Chris, we've been failures. We've been fighting this battle that at first we called clean air and clean water up in Aspen with John Denver and starting the Rocky Mountain Institute with Amy. And we've been trying everything, and it just keeps getting worse. We failed. So we need to start anew. We need to start something different and better And I said, and yeah, that's going to take the young people that fill in here. And she said, absolutely right. That's why mentoring is so critical, especially in this day and age.
Well, I couldn't agree with you more about that. And there's kind of two things I want to dig a little bit deeper in. But let me start with, when were you first really uh, committed to sustainability? I mean, what happened that's where you sort of said, 10 years ago, you started to get very involved, but like, was there something that happened in your life or career where you're like, oh my gosh, I need to do something about this. I need to be a leader in this. I need to really step forward. And then we'll talk more about the mentoring piece second.
I guess at an early age, I would go out on construction sites with my father. He owned a 100-person commercial architectural firm in the Midwest, and he had studied under Frank Lloyd Wright.
Oh,
So he knew about the flat roofs and the R values and the daylighting, all the lead style type things long before that. And he would take me out and point them out to me and tell me the value. But then I think the real big stimulus was that 2-year trip I took around the world after I got my MBA with my girlfriend. And we were going almost exclusively to third world countries, which I think they call developing countries now. And we were living with the people and hitchhiking and camping and youth hostels and all that. So we go out where there was still, like in Nepal, they still cook on indoor fires that are dung piles that are dried out. They clear cut the forest to get firewood for heating and eating. And so hillsides washing away. Jakarta, walking down the street, and there's 2 trenches on either side of the street that have running sewage running right down into the drinking water further downstream, where people are washing their clothes and bathing. And Varanasi in India, they're burning constant fires. What's the word for when they burn somebody's body?
oh,
Cremated.
okay. Yes,
Yeah.
you're right.
So these cremations go on night and day. It's a real holy place to have your body burned. They just dump the ashes right into the Ganga River flowing right by.
Wow.
And there's kids in there swimming, adults in there taking baths, brushing their teeth. And there's just so much pollution and things that I just couldn't really live with. I just knew that there had to be a better way. So I started looking at what the opportunities were for getting involved in the environmental movement back 50 years ago. That was when I traveled. And it was right about the time that Hunter Lovins and Amory Lovins were starting Rocky Mountain Institute. John Denver was singing about Rocky Mountain High.
Mm-hmm.
Buckminster Fuller was up there.
Mm.
So when we got back, we kind of went our separate ways for just growth. And so I moved to Aspen and got deeply involved with clean air, clean water, all that sort of stuff before they were talking about climate change. And then slowly it got to be realized about climate change. Now it's getting serious, more than just clean water and clean air. Society and the planet, not the planet will be fine. The people are going to be swept out and wiped out of this earth because of their own doing. The planet will be fine. So how do we stop that, or at least slow it? So that's when I really kind of dug into the whole thing.
And what are you doing today? There was a lot of work you're doing at the University of Colorado. Can you talk a little bit about that as we dial the clock forward? And then I want to come back to the mentoring part and the role that you play in getting this next generation of leaders to step up and continue your legacy and others.
I lived in Aspen twice. Once when I was young and single, And I was working at a big guest ranch there doing the marketing. But I would also take out the pack trips. I took the Trump family 4 times on pack trips without Donald. I taught those kids all about nature, and we'd get together at Christmas and go snowmobiling in the summer. We'd go on these pack trips. And it was probably one of my first experiences with, like, kind of officially mentoring somebody. And then when I started my first pet business there in Aspen with a couple other guys that we built to become the largest pet supply, not food, pet supply company in the country. And that forced us to move down here. That's when I first started goofing around at CU. But then I really wanted to raise my daughter, Aspen, in Aspen. So we moved back up there. Now, I had become friends with Auden Schindler, who for 26 years was the VP of Sustainability for the Aspen Skiing Company. He is definitely one of my mentors. He's like my environmental hero. And so by then, when I moved back the second time, he had a daughter that was my daughter's age. So we even spent more time together. We went to New York City Climate March together, different COPs and stuff. And so I was trying to figure out what to do next after the same 3 of us started another pet company that wasn't food. We sold that one. So now I'm getting a little tired of the pet industry, and I thought, okay, I'm going to look at wind and solar and hydro and tidal and all this. So I took a couple of years just playing Mr. Mom with my daughter in elementary school, going skiing and teaching the kids how to snowboard and stuff. And I just, let's see, let's jump ahead to the second time when my daughter was there and everything. I'm talking to Auden. He says, Chris, none of those that are you just presented to me as ideas. How many people do you know in wind? How many people do you know in solar, in tidal, whatever? He says, how many people do you know in the pet industry? You know all the founders and the different owners and et cetera, et cetera. You guys built the biggest and the best and really helped change that industry. So why don't you do what I did, Auden, and him and Yvonne Chenard and REI, North Face, there was 7 of them, started the Outdoor Industry Association. He said, why don't you do something similar in pet? And so we talked about that, and he said on chapter 5 of the book that I'm just about to publish, there's a saying from Archimedes 200 years ago. Give me a lever long enough and a fulcrum on which to place it, and I shall move the world. So he says, what's your biggest lever? How can you make a big impact? Why don't you start something in the pet world? There's a huge environmental footprint from the pets and all the food they eat and the packaging and everything. So that's what started in the Pet Sustainability Coalition. The idea was 15 years ago. Then I went to the trade shows and talked to the companies that were already doing something in sustainability. Told them I wanted to start this nonprofit. A couple of years later, we got $10,000 from 8 companies that gave me the money I needed to hire Hunter Lovins and do our website and all the intellectual property. I told Hunter right at the very beginning, don't give me any IP that can be open sourced. And we still are to this day. Everything on our website is open source. Any industry can get in there and see what we've done. Started out with, eventually hired an executive director. I think you meant Caitlin.
Yes.
And she was with us for 10 years. And we grew to now where we're 200 business members that are on 5 continents. We've got 12 full-time staff here in Boulder, and we're making a huge difference in the Pet Sustainability Coalition, not just nationwide, but international. So that's an example of my passion and my mentoring kind of coming together, because those two things merge very nicely in the Pet Sustainability Coalition. I've always been volunteer there, always want to be. And in CU, I've always been volunteer and always want to be, so that I'm not trapped in these silos of any kind and I don't have to answer to anybody. And with that, Auden gave me a list of some people in Boulder that I asked him for when I moved out of Aspen. He said, Chris, you can't start this thing from Aspen. You got to be in one of the V's: Burlington, Berkeley, Boston, Boulder, to have the people and the like-minded thinkers help you build this thing. So moved down to Boulder. Aspen was kicking and screaming, and it's still after 7. And I hated it. I was loving living in Aspen. Had the wooden cabin in the middle of this ranch, T. Lacey Salmon Ranch, 10 years, 5 years, both times we lived there. And so I asked him for a list of 10 movers and shakers in Boulder, because he came down here quite a bit and talked with Jeff Stewart's class and stuff. And one of the names he gave me was the head of the, at the time, of the Deming Center for Entrepreneurship. And so that I went to lunch with him, and he invited another lady, and he said, Chris, I want you to start a sustainability center here at the business.
Was this Paul Jurdy?
Paul Jurdy.
Oh, my gosh.
And Cindy Carrillo was up.
Right.
Then she was in there, and he looked at Cindy and said, I want you to start the Women's Council.
Right.
So Cindy looked at me. She said, I'll join yours if you join mine. So
I remember you. Well, of course, Cindy was on our season 1 podcast. Actually,
love her.
Yeah, she's amazing. The work that she's doing today.
Yeah, we're good friends. So for 10 years, I was the only male.
Yes.
Judge Carrisso was for a while, but never came to the meeting. I never missed a meeting. It was my favorite group of professional people. Is that how we met?
I think that might have been how we met. That might have been how we met. Yes.
So then I was at the alumni house on campus one day for a presentation that Eric Mueller was giving about happiness. He wrote a book about happiness. And so the whole MBAs, all the MBAs from the business school were invited. I was standing there talking to 3 of these ladies when his talk started, and he kind of ended it up by saying, one of the things that's made me the happiest and contributed to my success has been having good mentors. And so he said, I think that everyone should have a mentor or a mentee or both. So in a presentation, this gal who I had been talking to turned to me and said, will you be my mentor? I said, I don't know what that exactly means, but yeah. And so, as you know, my 70th birthday party was a couple weeks ago. So I had her speak as my longest term mentor. I had my youngest mentor, 20 years old, speak. And I had Alex, we met her when we were talking that day at Eric's, before the MBAs got started.
Yes.
Elite MBAs, I can't remember what the deal was. So all 3 of them, and I didn't want them to talk about me to the 150 people that were watching. I wanted them to talk about the value of mentorship, what they got out of it, and what they're still getting out of it. Because almost all my mentees, I stay with me. I stay with them over the years. But I know you want to talk a little bit about resilience, so let's switch to that.
Yeah, well, actually the segue I want to make on that is maybe a little bit different about this is a difficult time that we're in. And what I've seen with so many young people, and I, like you, I mentor a number of people,
Thank you.
and I feel that there's such a lack of hope, and there's so much fear about the future. And what I would like to explore with you, Chris, is this idea of us being resilient during times that just seem so difficult. And again, you've just turned 70. I'm in my late 60s, and I feel like we've seen so much that, in some ways, this too will pass. But how do you talk about being resilient with people that you mentor? Do you talk about that? How does it show up in your life?
I think that going back to that 2-year trip around the world, that's where I really learned a valuable lesson. I went to Everest Base Camp twice. The first time with my girlfriend, and as we're coming back out, there's a big, huge expedition coming down the Khumbu Valley. And I asked Cheryl if I could tag along with them if she wanted to go back to Kathmandu and hang out. So I did. And Gary Neptune, who owns Neptune Mountaineering, was one of those climbers. And I asked him if there was anything I could do to be part of the team. And he said, yeah, the guy who was running the sound for the movie we're making about the 7 summits got altitude sickness, and if you're acclimatized, which you are, take over the mics. And so I did. And then we were off at base camp a few weeks later, getting ready to go into the Khumbu icefall. I'm not a ice climber or a high mountain climber, and you have to be licensed and all insured. And so I took the microphone up right to the base of the icefall with the cameraman, and I had giardia for like a week in advance, where I was just running out of both ends nonstop. So I was totally dehydrated, but I wasn't going to miss the first day of going into the base camp and interviewing all the guys. That's the most dangerous part of Mount Everest, the first part. That's where everybody dies.
Well,
And so all of a sudden I started getting real lightheaded, dropped the mic, and all of a sudden I fell over backwards. Bang. I'm laying on the ground. And so it just so happened the team doctor was a few feet away, and he came over and he asked me if I was sick or whatever. And I told him I had giardia, and then I kind of like passed out. And so I actually kind of had an out-of-body experience where I was maybe 10 feet above myself, looking down. And the climbers are now gathered around. And the doctor said, he's going to die if we don't get him back down to base camp and get him on IVs. I was dehydrated. So I had made friends with a number of the Sherpas, and the one that was the porter for Sherpa for Kelly and I coming up the first time was also one of the Sherpas there, and so we were good friends. And so he hollered to a bunch of his Sherpa friends, help get this guy out of here and carry him down the hill. So as soon as I got down there, got pumped up full of, this Sherpa said, now come with me. And he said, I want you to sit here in a chair and face the sun. And he said, if you face the sun, all your shadows will fall behind you.
wow.
Yeah. And so to this day, there isn't a day that goes by that I don't go out and sit in the sun and face the sun, maybe sometimes 1 minute, maybe sometimes 15 minutes. But I put all the electronics down. I sit squarely in front of the sun, and I just think how grateful for all the good things that there are. Like I lived through these 3 strokes. 30% of people who have a stroke die within 24 hours. I've had 3. You saw me in the hospital. I couldn't even move my little finger.
Right.
So another saying that I heard one time was from the guy who gave our commencement address when I went to Michigan State for undergrad. And he said, it's not your aptitude, but your attitude that determines your altitude.
Mm-hmm.
So the attitude thing has always been, that really resonated with me. And it's all, I think, just how can I keep my attitude good? So coming back to the students today, yeah, they're in a real serious time in the planet. And I feel a real responsibility to keep them lifted up. So that's why I go to the COPs and the trade show, or not the trade shows, but I'm missing the word, but the workshops and the seminars around sustainability all over the country. So I can kind of keep ahead of what's going to come next once we get out of this rat's hole. And so I talk to students about how there's really hope for geothermal. I mean, CU is doing a big geothermal retrofit as part of their climate action plan now. Tidal. If we did tidal right, the motion from there could eliminate any sort of oil and gas we needed. As we all know, solar and wind are the cheapest and quickest form of energy now. And at some point, the Republicans are going to realize what we got in Trump, and they're going to come back to reality. And even if it takes 4 years till he's gone, I want those students to be ready with the latest and greatest information on how to start anew with sustainability and healing the planet. So that's part of why we started this Buckley Center for Sustainability Education. You might have heard about Spike Buckley just gave $10 million to start this. Not the Buckley Center for Sustainable Education, sustainability. So every person who graduates from CU has to take at least one basic climate class that teaches you about the tipping points. And we just passed our first one last week with the melting of the glaciers. That it can be reversed now, the glaciers.
Wow.
So the seas are definitely, well, that's just one example that people need to be aware of, and they need to learn about what is a heat pump, what is insulation, the first thing you should do to green something up, and stuff like that. So whenever I talk to the students, whether it's one-on-one mentoring or guest lecturing in a class, I talk about all the positive things that are yet to come. And I truly believe that the pendulum is not going to be just swinging like this, like it does through history. It's going to swing so far to the right over here that when Trump and team get out of there, it's going to be a slingshot instead of just a swing shot. That the students are going to be loaded with sustainability careers. And AI is going to be more sophisticated then. And I tell the students, learn it, get ready, because it's going to be the best tool to stop climate change. The big problem we have right now with the grid not being powerful enough to run all the renewable energy through, that's a perfect AI thing that can be figured out. I tell them about how the railroad from the tracks around the United States. I saw a presentation about how a pipe about the size of a barrel could have enough fiber optic cables in there that could handle all the electricity buried 3 feet in the ground alongside the railway right-of-way and eliminate all those overhead grid structures. And so things like that, there's plenty of room, plenty of opportunity coming right now and in the future to turn this thing around. We have all the answers. Hunter Lovins has been talking about the answers for decades now. Amory, everybody. So I really do, in my heart, feel it's hopeful. And that it's the young people that need to be hopeful right along with us, because you and me are going to be gone in 10 or 20 years. So we got to have stalwart people that carry the torch.
Well, it's just to hear you talk about this, it just strikes me that your passion ignites that in others, and it also helps create this hope, which then creates resiliency. That it really is this circle of, if you have something you believe in, that you really, really care about, it gives you the sense that there's something worth living for. And if you believe there's something worth living for, then it creates this almost like a superpower that you can kind of get through stuff like we're going through right now.
That's exactly a good word for it, superpower, because I'm happier than I've ever been. And I feel just grateful, so grateful to even be here, that I don't ever want to be on another payroll for anybody. I just want to help spread the gospel of face the sun and all your shadows will fall behind you. Keep on the sunny side. All that sort of attitude is what people need right now.
Wow. Well, I think that's a perfect way to end this episode of Jane's Place.
Okay. Thank you for letting me sit down with you.
Thank you, Chris. It's
Okay.
amazing.
If you're listening to, not watching this episode, you would not know that Chris is bound to a motorized chair after his 3 strokes. I share this with you because Chris is the most mobile person I know. And before we started our podcast, he was telling me about how he wanted to storm the football field with the students at a key CU game this fall. He goes everywhere, does everything, and always has the most positive attitude about life. I loved his advice. Face the sun, and all your shadows will fall behind you. His gratitude for life and hope for the future has me thinking about these 2 questions for us to consider. First, when things aren't going our way, how or where do we find a glimmer of hope to bolster our attitude? And second, what is the biggest lever that we have at our disposal to make the biggest impact in our lives? Now, Earl and I are going to go immediately out and face the sun as soon as he tells you about his Happy Hug Box, the sponsor of Jane's Place Season 2. Take it away, Earl.
Hey, Earl here, Chief Hugs Officer at Jane's Place. After joining almost every episode, I discovered my passion, and that passion is giving hugs. Hugs, hugs. I also learned something pretty important along the way too. When things feel hard or uncertain, and sometimes even when life is exciting, words aren't always enough. But showing up for someone is. And by adding a hug, you say, I care. So I've started a hugs movement to kick off 2026. I just know the world can be a better place if we are generous with our hugs. But since I can't be everywhere, I've created Earl's Happy Hug Box. It's a special gift box curated by me, and inside there's a comfy, life-size plush that looks just like me. I call him Earl Jr. Plus a few other fun things are included too. Now, if someone came to mind while you were listening or watching today, this might be for them. Or might even be what you could use right now. You can learn more at janesplace.com/Earl. But for now, I'll leave you with one of my Earls of Wisdom. Show up, hug often.
Special thanks to my amazing producer, Aditi Joshi, for her partnership in creating Jane's Place and all her hard work behind the scenes to make Jane's Place so special. I am also grateful that my Chief Hugs Officer, Sir Earl Grey, has a real voice thanks to my good friend, Jake Dawson. And Jane's Place feels like home with the music from an amazing musician, Tim Cook. Tim gave us permission to use the Subdued song, Them Figs, as our upbeat theme music. Tune into the next episode of Jane's Place, where dreams learn to fly.